In a way, I guess we should be grateful. I mean, the death of Queen Elizabeth has sure flushed out the haters, and not just some Republicans that I showed you last night. Also, race baiters, race hustlers, identity warriors who divide us by the least significant thing about us, our race. And I have to say, listening to these people now, isn't it time we all of us said, enough? You bore us with your games. Now, you would think, for instance, the Channel 10 host, Narelda Jacobs, that she'd give the Queen some credit, maybe even a thank you, for giving her Aboriginal father an OBE, and personally gave him a chat as well. But no, Narelda Jacobs, whose mother was of Irish and English background, said she wouldn't mourn the woman.
While the world has united in grief over the Queen's passing, colonised people have also united over their trauma because we know that in British museums are stolen artefacts, stolen, gems, diamonds. There are human remains that are sitting in British museums even now, and so there's been no kind of acknowledgement of that or apology for that.
I've had enough of that stuff, really. Honestly, get over yourself. Demanding apologies for what some people dead for 200 years did to people dead for 200 years, holding the Queen now responsible for things that she herself never did. And sitting there, this victim of colonialism, in a beautiful, fashionable outfit, beautifully coiffed with a lovely TV job, while millions of other Australians of all races are doing it much harder. But all of us enjoying the freedoms of a society that has such British roots. Then there's Green Senator Lydia Thorpe, the daughter of a white man, again abusing the Queen as a coloniser in a tweet, when in fact the British Empire decolonised under Elizabeth's rule, and again she stayed out of practical politics anyway. Well, Thorpe even claimed that the fact that Aborigines were jailed at high rates, by the way, that is because they commit crimes at high rates, and that Aboriginal children had to be saved at high rates, for reasons too obvious for me to have to explain, these were in fact signs of an ongoing war against Aboriginal people in this country, and therefore she couldn't grieve for Queen Elizabeth. I mean, these non sequiturs, this kind of inflammatory, and in my opinion, deceitful talk, that's exactly the kind of rabble-rousing that could one day create the race war that Thorpe claims to see already around her, as if the Queen would never be that reckless and class, and she had more class. And then there is activist Belinda Duarte, who successfully helped to push for the AFL's Women's League to scrap the minute's silence for the Queen, claiming a minute's silence just brought up the impact of colonisation for Aborigines, and this AFL-mandated minute of silence imposed a reflection on the impact of her life and reign, and this unearths deep wounds for us. Well, I just wonder how the impact of the Queen's reign actually impacted Aborigines. What did she personally do other than good, as best as she could? But two other things about Belinda Duarte there. I mean, first, she elsewhere describes herself as a descendant from two Aboriginal tribes, but also with Polish and Celtic heritage. Now, of course, she's entitled to identify as Aboriginal if that is how she feels. I don't quarrel with that. But why should that choice matter to the rest of us any more than if she decided to identify as Polish instead, or a Celtic girl instead, or, which would have been my choice, as an Australian? It's all her business and her sensitivities. That's fine. She can choose what she wants. But should the vast majority of Australians tiptoe around people like her and cancel a minute's silence of respect for the monarch of us all? And this conceit that activists like the ones I've mentioned, they speak for all Aborigines. I mean, seriously, that is nonsense. Now, if that were true, that the Queen represents only pain for Aborigines, and we Aborigines, we're scarred these women here speaking for all Aborigines, that even being silent for 60 seconds is too much to bear, opening old wounds. Then why, for instance, are two people who identify as Aborigines happy, honoured to be among the 10 so-called ordinary Australians invited by the Prime Minister to travel with him to London to sit through a whole funeral service, never mind 60 seconds, a whole funeral service for the late Queen? Because going along with the Prime Minister will be Senior Australian of the Year, Miriam Rose Ungunmer-Bauman, and Professor Helen Milroy, who identifies as our first Aboriginal doctor. I say enough. Enough of parading your race like it's qualification, or parading the race you identify with. Enough of everyone else having to pretend that this matters. Oh, your race. Suddenly, grave face, very, very sensitive. Apologies must be made. Treaty signed and a race-based parliament created in our constitution. Just enough. But one question for me remains, hearing people like that. This talk of needing a treaty. Now, normally a treaty means one side gives a little bit and the other side gives a little bit. They reach an agreement, over. If we ever do have a federal government silly enough to sign a treaty, and Labor wants to, the people like Lydia Thorpe, I ask, what are they offering in exchange? We know their demands. Always demands. What I never hear is what they're offering in exchange.